morning, I'm Leslie Riddick.
And I'm Colin Bell. We'd like to welcome you to Head On this Wednesday morning, which could help if you've got a neurotic cat.
So slip Tiddles a tranquilizer, pour yourself a cuppa, and stay with us for the next 90 minutes.
I'll compile a punter's guide to those who have an instant opinion on everything for publication.
I'll peer through the smog to see how the first 30 years of the Clean Air Act have worked out.
We will indeed be given advice on coping with a psychotic pussycat.
And worldwide this week we'll be catching up on China. But first, glittering in its newfound role as festival city and cultural capital, Glasgow is almost squeaky clean these days.
And now the moment for which all distressed cat owners have been waiting. What to do if your moggy shows evident signs of neurosis? The first step, I fear, is move to London or Surrey, where Peter Neville practices as a cat therapist. However, I recognise that that's too great a sacrifice to ask of even the most devoted cat lover, so, since as it happens I've got a mildly demented tabby among my own extensive collection, I thought I'd try for some long-distance counselling. I spoke to Peter earlier and asked him what kind of problems brought a cat to his couch.
Well, it can be any one of a number of behaviour problems, some of which you might regard as normal cat behaviours going on in the wrong place, and some of which you might regard as very abnormal cat behaviours. The owner will go along to their usual veterinary surgeon, who may or may not try one of the usual medical cures, and then send them along to us if there's no result.
Well, do you mean that cats which display a curious lack of toilet training might end up with you?
Yes, that's a very common one. In fact, I think it's the commonest problem that we see. The normal fastidious cat has a breakdown in toileting behaviour. Another common one is the cat, which can be male or female, neutered or unneutered, spraying indoors to mark his territory.
Well, what can you do? I'm glad that you're trying to do it, but I'm slightly puzzled as how you actually counsel a cat.
Well, like vets, we can't really talk to the patient, so we have to talk to the next best thing, which is the owner. And we try to find out a little bit about the cat's character and perhaps try to identify the cause of the breakdown in behaviour, if it is a breakdown. And look at the cat's background, the sorts of things that we know influence a cat's behaviour, and see whether we can't pick up one or two problems there.
Is it not very often the case that you very rapidly come to the conclusion there's nothing wrong with the cat, it's the owner?
Well, a lot of people say that. They think we must spend our lives dealing with a lot of lunatics, but in fact we don't. And we do meet a few, of course, but nearly all of our clients are perfectly normal people like you and I, had pets for years, and have run into a particular problem with this particular animal.
Well, cats are normally thought to be enormously self-contained, as you say, very fastidious. They certainly do not regard those who have paid for them and feed them as their owners. They think it's the other way around almost. So how often does a cat break out from this pattern and behave like something really stupid and neurotic like a dog?
Do I detect a cat owner speaking here?
and I'm afraid a loony dog owner, yes.
And you got the best of both worlds, folks. Well, as you say, there's 6.3 or 6.4 million cats in the country now, and by and large they don't present behaviour problems because they lead a very independent, perhaps outdoor lifestyle, and simply come home to eat and sleep and be cuddled. But for those that are tending now, particularly in our cities, to live more of an indoor life, we really must try to do a little bit more to compensate for the lack of stimulation, and providing them with greater interest, greater things to do. And if we don't, then perhaps we start to see more behaviour problems as a result.
Well, yes, you cite obviously a very difficult circumstance. Someone living in the inner city, perhaps at the top of a block of flats. How can you stimulate a cat which is only bored out of its mind there?
Well, the best thing is actually another cat. If you introduce them right early on enough, that in itself can be a playmate and a friend. And even if it's not particularly friendly, the actual presence of another cat is a little bit of a rival, can keep them interested. Lots of toys. There's a whole new range of smart things for cats to do now, little cat centres, and lots of contact with owners can go some way towards compensating. To some extent, it's what you've never had you don't miss, and you make the best out of the situation you've got. So whilst we wouldn't ever advise people to take a cat that's used to being outdoors and making it into a flat cat, as it were, if you take the cat from a kitten and keep it indoors, then it can lead a perfectly happy life.
I hate to pursue this, but I'm afraid I feel obliged to. A cat centre. Is this yet another piece of commercial exploitation that a loving cat owner is now supposed to invest a fortune in some plastic playground?
No, there are perhaps all the things that you regard as essential for your cat, such as a bed and a litter tray and a feeding area and a few toys and things, all chucked into one rather neat bit of equipment that doesn't disgrace your living room in the way that perhaps an ordinary cat litter tray might.
I see. So it doesn't fall into a catatonic trance. Sorry about that. But are there, in fact, cases where quite plainly you, or indeed even before you, a vet will have said, well, actually, the best thing here is some chemical intervention, actually tranquilizers for pussycats?
Very rarely. We tend to use tranquilizer sedatives as a vehicle for introducing other forms of behaviour therapy. So, for instance, the cat that is very timid or very anxious may find it very difficult to be treated in the way that we suggest, which involves facing up to some of life's realities a little bit. And therefore we would use a sedative perhaps for 2 to 3 weeks to help that initial process. And thereafter the cat will get, is on the road to getting better without those drugs. Other problems which perhaps require some sort of hormonal intervention will be spraying perhaps, or competition between two cats in a house. These sorts of things where we need perhaps to knock back particularly the effect of male hormones, for instance.
Are there also problems which are inherent in a cat's nature, but some owners find distressing, things like clawing the furniture or indeed eating the furniture?
Yes, there's a lot of problem behaviours that we see, as I said at the beginning, are normal behaviours for cats. And unfortunately they sometimes transfer them to places that we don't want them to. So spraying is a normal function of a cat to mark his territory, clawing up the furniture, both to sharpen claws and to mark territory. There's little exudates that come from the bottom of the cat's paws that leave his own personal slime, if you like, down the furniture. All these sorts of things are very natural behaviours, and they can upset the owners indeed. And sometimes our treatment is involved about perhaps making the cat more secure indoors, perhaps by doing away with a cat flap, perhaps by seeing that there's too many cats in a house for security for an individual, and then the problem will go away. So we modify the environment to affect the animal's behaviour.
All this takes some time.
It's amazing how quickly some of them do respond to change, actually. Some obviously take longer than others, but a typical, we would expect some improvement following the sorts of suggestions that we make within 2 to 3 days in many cases.
And is business good?
Well, business is booming, actually. I'm not sure whether it's a symptom of the growing number of cats and dogs we have, because we do see dogs as well. Or it's a case of more neuroses. I'm not quite sure.
And do you think that also reflects where you practice, the fact it's Greater London? It's an urban circumstance which the people lead most curiously artificial lives as well.
I think that's right, and I speak as one who leads a rather curious artificial life myself and regret it and perhaps divert my attentions into my own pets. Yes, that could well be the case. Others, in fact, are much more general across the country, and we have a very successful clinic in the northwest of England, which you probably still regard as
south of here, yeah.
southern industrialisation. But in Manchester, for instance, and Liverpool, we have a thriving clinic, which we carry out about a week every 3 or 4 weeks or so.
What's it cost?
For a cat, the usual fee is about £30. That is the full cost of the consultation, plus any after treatment that we may engage in by telephone. And those fees, as indeed all our fees for seeing problem pet behaviour, are recoverable under most veterinary insurance policies.
And any particular types of cat that are particularly vulnerable? I mean, is it true, the popular prejudice, that a highly inbred pedigree is going to be in a lot worse shape than a good, solid, street-cred moggy?
I think both cats and dogs, you have to say that the sort of crossbred dog is usually the fittest, best able to adapt, healthiest type of animal. But curiously with cats, it does seem that a lot of the more highly bred strains, the Orientals, the Siamese, the Burmese, are also more intelligent, much more sensitive creatures. And so, yes, I mean, we see more of them, but for different reasons. One very interesting feature that I'm currently investigating with Siamese and Burmese is the phenomenon of wool chewing and eating, where you can be caressing your cat on your lap and he'll be quietly munching his way through your sweater. If you turn your back, he may set his teeth into your 3-piece suite. And really some quite substantial damage being done. We suspect some sort of inherited condition, but very interestingly, just last week I heard of an ordinary moggy that was engaging in this behaviour as well. So that's quite a conundrum. We know that increasing the fibre content of the diet and providing an ad-lib diet may help solve that problem, but it's not by any means the whole answer.
No, it actually solves a problem of mine there. I thought we were infested with giant moths. I now realise it's those flaming cats.
It's those cats, yeah.
But, it's been worth every penny of this consultation. Thank you very much indeed.
Well, it's a free one.
That's what I mean. Cat therapist Peter Neville. What a very nice man he was. After the news, Leslie is not so much going...
What a lot of bullshit.
Oh.